I've talked a lot recently about why I think Blackbeard is currently the strongest in the world, but today I want to talk about the crew that could be the toughest challenge for the Straw Hats, and that's the Blackbeard Pirates. We're gonna go through every single member of the Blackbeard Pirates and talk about their abilities, power level, and how it can match up with certain Straw Hats. But of course, as always, make sure you subscribe and join our King Pirates crew. And if you have a good time watching this video, please drop a like for the YouTube algorithm. Thank you. Alright, but to start things off, the first guy I want to talk about is Shiryu, because he's the person that's kind of unofficially the second in command in the Blackbeard Pirates. And that's part of what makes Shiryu such an interesting character. It's not just his story and his potential matchup, but it's also his portrayal in the story, which has been kind of all over the place, especially in the community, because within the story, we really have not seen that much from him, at least not enough to kind of expect him to be the second in command of the Blackbeard Pirates. He was the ex-head jailer of Impel Down along with Magellan, and you guys know me, I'm a Magellan fanboy. But as far as his role in the Blackbeard Pirates go, he's someone that joined a little later on, and honestly, out of all the Blackbeard Pirates, I think you can make an argument that Burgess is the right hand, because he's been there since the beginning. He's always been right next to Blackbeard. Even right now, he's the first Titanic captain. But despite that, the general consensus has been that Shiryu is the second in command of the Blackbeard Pirates, mainly because he's gonna have a potential future matchup with Zoro. So power scaling wise, Shiryu has always been in this weird situation where the portrayal of his character has been pretty high because of a potential future matchup with Zoro, but within the story, he really has not showcased that much. Now, on one hand, I think the portrayal has gotten out of hand sometimes, like thinking that Shiryu is gonna kill Mihawk. That's just a little too far to me. I think that's kind of crazy given that Mihawk is literally the strongest swordsman in the world and Zoro's final goal. So I don't think anything like that is gonna happen, but at the same time, it does seem like our expectations were correct, because recently in a double page color spread, Oda drew a bunch of right hands and top Yonko commanders in one double page color spread, and Shiryu was the person that represented the Blackbeard Pirates. Now what's interesting is that Oda actually commented on this double page color spread, saying that not all people within that spread are right hands. But at the same time, he did also say that those are the people that he sees as the second in command of their respective crews. So with that said, I think it's pretty much certain at this point we are gonna get Zoro versus Shiryu in the future. And just based off of that alone, I have to assume that Shiryu is gonna be an absolute monster. It's pretty much the same argument I make for Blackbeard as the strongest pirate in the world, and that is that he's gonna be a future villain in the story, which means that he has to be stronger to pose as a danger to a future Luffy, or in Shiryu's case, a future Zoro. And Zoro, as he is right now, is already an absolute monster. So as far as power level go for Shiryu, like I said earlier, I don't expect him to surpass Mihawk, but I do think it's likely that he's gonna end up stronger than King, which I will say, even saying that out loud just feels kind of crazy because we've seen so little from Shiryu. But if I'm gonna be consistent, I have to believe that Shiryu is that strong because I want that future Zoro fight to be epic. So with that said, let's talk about Shiryu's powers and how he's gonna be that strong. And the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that he's actually a swordsman, and that in itself is already incredibly exciting for me, because it's really been a long time since Zoro properly fought a swordsman. King had a sword, but he didn't really consider himself one. Shiryu, on the other hand, does seem like an actual swordsman, so it's gonna be interesting to see how Zoro is tested in this battle, because pre-time skip, Zoro did fight a lot of different swordsmen, and he was tested in different ways. But ever since his fight in Alabasta with Mr. One, there's been a continuous build-up with his ability to cut things, which has been heavily emphasized post-time skip, to the point where post-time skip, he's not really even fighting swordsmen anymore. Instead, he's cutting down giant stone humans and in Wano, two of the tankiest characters in the story. So because there's been such a strong emphasis on that, I expect in the Shiryu fight that will continue. But at the same time, I expect it to be different because I don't think Shiryu's gonna be an absolute tank like Kaido or King. There has been a theory within the community for a long time that one of the Blackbeard Pirates is gonna steal Jozu's fruit and Zoro's gonna have to cut Diamond. But Shiryu, as we saw, already has Absalom's fruit, so I don't think he's gonna get a second one. Now I do want to say the invisibility fruit is going to serve as a test for Zoro in other ways. He's going to have to really lock into his observation haki in this battle. Maybe we'll see something happen with his eye. But in the end, I still expect the bigger focal point in this battle to come down to haki, because if this is the pure swordsman battle that I'm expecting, there'll be some tactics back and forth to try to counter each other. But in the end, it's going to come down to who has the stronger haki and can outlast the other person and cut them down. So because of that, I expect armament and Conqueror's haki to be major focal points. And because of that, I almost feel like that Shiryu has to have Conqueror's haki to be at an even playing field, which once again, it just feels kind of crazy for me to say because Shiryu has really shown nothing in the story for me to believe that. So honestly, I'm really conflicted because I feel like he needs Conqueror's haki to be a really good opponent for future Zoro, but I also just feel like it's a little crazy to kind of assume that he already has that. One way or another though, I expect this to be a grueling battle of attrition. As always, Zoro's gonna end up in a bloody battle where he's really tested with his durability and haki across all all levels, and honestly I think Shiryu has potential to be this sleeping giant within the Blackbeard Pirates. Also, I think his sword Ryu is probably a supreme grade blade. That being said though, let's move on to the next person that could also be considered Blackbeard's right hand man, and that is Burgess. And as far as Burgess goes, my immediate thought was probably Sanji, just based off of portrayal. With Burgess also being one of the top officers of the Blackbeard Pirates, it feels right that Sanji would fight him as a monster trio. But when you actually look at Burgess's character and how he fights, the Jinbei matchup just makes way too much sense. And it starts off with his role on the ship, which is a helmsman that Jinbei is as well. So that element matches up, and what's interesting is that out of all of the original Blackbeard Pirates, Burgess is really the only one that doesn't have a Straw Hat counterpart out of the original Straw Hats. Like when we look at the Blackbeard Pirates and the Straw Hats when they first meet in Jaya, a lot of the characters are pretty much lined up according to role besides Sanji, Zoro, and Burgess. So Burgess kind of breaks the mold there, but I do think he makes perfect sense matching up with Jinbei, because not only are they both helmsmen, but they're both like really big, well-built guys, so it's a perfect matchup size-wise. And then there's also combat style, which could make this into a terrific MMA fight, because on one hand you have Jinbei, who specializes in different fisherman martial arts with karate and jujutsu, and then you have Burgess, who's literally a wrestler. So honestly, as far as this fight goes, I really just want it to be a straight up brawl. As we saw in Dressrosa, Burgess still does not have a devil fruit. That could end up changing, but honestly I would prefer it if he didn't have one, because power wise I think they already match up pretty well. Burgess did get watched by Sabo, but I think that's fine because Jinbei I think would as well. Some of you might point out that Jinbei fought Ace to a standstill and Sabo is pretty much Ace 2.0, but at the same time Sabo is what I think Ace could have been if he also survived and lived through the time skip, and that version of Ace I think would have surpassed Jinbei and washed him as well. So power wise I think Burgess as he is right now is a pretty good matchup for Jinbei, and like I said, I really just want this to be a simple brawl. Obviously hockey and tactics are going to be involved, but I really don't want much more injected into this story. Like if you want to tell us Burgess's story, maybe do that very quickly, but I don't think anybody is really dying for a Burgess flashback. So my dream for this fight is that it's a very simple fight, it's not cluttered unlike the Who's Who fights, which not only happened very quickly, but he was also dropping a bunch of dialogue and just revealing information. I don't want this potential Burgess Jinbei fight to be like that. I just want to see like a clean art style like old One Piece fights had. If Oda ends up giving a double fruit to Burgess, that's fine too, because that creates an opportunity for Jinbei to maybe get even stronger and reach his peak. Either way though, I think this is the perfect matchup for Jinbei, and although it could be the simplest fight, that could be the best version of it. On to the next one though, we're talking about another OG of the Blackbeard Pirates, and that is Lafitte. And at first glance, it's really hard to tell who's going to be a good opponent for Lafitte. We don't really know anything about the guy, he's pretty mysterious. But first off, with his role on the ship as a navigator alone, I think that's a pretty clear hint that Nami is a matchup. And then on top of that, when you look at his personality and also his character build, it just feels like a Nami opponent, because although Nami is usually fighting a female like Double Finger, Ulti, or Khalifa, Lafitte's built like a Korean model, so he's not really that outside of the box for a Nami opponent. Like when you look at Lafitte, he just doesn't seem like an opponent for someone like Frankie or Jinbei or any of the monster trio. I guess if you wanted to choose anybody else, I think Brook could be potentially an interesting matchup, but I think he also fits very well as a Nami opponent, especially with his personality, how he's very schemy. So it creates an opportunity for a very witty, high intelligence battle, which those are the type of fights where Nami really gets to shine and show off. Against Miss Doublefinger, she had to use this makeshift clean attack that Usopp made to defeat one of the high members of Baroque Works. Then she went on to do the same thing against a CP9 member. The ulti fight I actually think is the only one where she didn't really get to show off, and is probably her worst fight, because not only did Big Mom interrupt that battle and do a lot of damage, but also Nami didn't really get to do anything herself and show off her intelligence, and it was really Zeus that saved the day. And I don't think Zeus is necessarily a bad power-up, but Nami just needs to be the person in control and giving out the commands, and I think she'll have the opportunity to do that in a fight against Lafitte, because he clearly seems like a schemer himself, snuck into Marijois, he knows hypnosis. On top of that, he does seem to have a devil fruit with his wings. In his Viva card, it was hinted that it was likely a devil fruit, but it could be something else. I'm sure there's gonna be more story to that and more to that ability, but just with his ability to fly, that creates an interesting fight dynamic with Nami using weather. I do think Lafitte's gonna have a lot more in his bag that he's gonna get to show off. Power-wise though, I don't think he has to be like incredibly strong. Like him being like close to the strength of Ulti I think is fine, because in the end Nami didn't really even defeat Ulti herself, so that's probably a good level for her next fight. But the main thing I need from this fight is that god tier battle of wits writing that Oda has in his bag, because Nami deserves it. That being said though, let's talk about the next person, and that is Van Augur, and this might be my most anticipated fight besides Zoro versus Shiryu, because Van Augur is definitely gonna fight Usopp, and there's a lot of potential to this fight. From the moment we met Van Augur, we got a first-hand look at how beastly of a sniper this man was, because he was sniping down birds from incredibly far distances. But not only that, but Usopp was also the one that found those birds, and he couldn't even imagine sniping from that far. So from the get-go, Oda is already establishing an incredible distance between their skills. So right away, there's gonna be that progression factor of seeing how the East Blue Usopp has climbed all the way to fighting one of the greatest snipers in the world, if not the greatest. Like, I genuinely believe that Van Augur is probably on the same level as Yasopp, who's one of the top commanders of a Yonko crew. There's a lot of different ways this could intersect as well if the red hair pirates also get involved. But even if that doesn't happen, the red hair pirates don't get involved, I do think there's some history between Van Augur and Yasopp, because Van Augur, just like Usopp and Yasopp, is from the East Blue. Now, that could be some random fact that Oda threw in there, but it feels kind of ironic that he is. So there could be some history there that make things even more interesting. Maybe he looked up to Yasopp at some point, or just wants to take him down. So when Usopp goes into this fight, he might not only be fighting for his pride, but also for his dad. And honestly, I think I'm just so excited because everything is just building up for a massive step forward for Usopp. Because although he had that great epic moment of learning observation haki back in Dressrosa, so far in Wano, he has not only not showcased that, but he's also done nothing. Like, the pop greens were the main power-up he got out of the time skip, and those couldn't even tickle page 1. So I think this is all setting up some major development for Usopp, and Elbaf's gonna be a big part of that. Maybe Van Augur also is involved in Elbaf, or he's gonna be the next step after Elbaf. But when this fight goes down, I do think it's gonna be probably the biggest power-up for Usopp in the story, because if you think about it, he's literally fighting like a Yonko commander level dude, which is crazy to think about, but I do think Usopp is gonna go down as the greatest sniper in history. So I think his observation haki is gonna go to a godly level. I'm gonna be curious to see how he upgrades his ammunition, because he's gonna need some stronger ones. Armament haki could be an option, but I feel like that would be kind of random. But either way, I honestly think this could be the greatest fight for Usopp in the story, and I fully expect him to defeat an elite sniper with his Kabuto. I'm just gonna be so proud. That being said though, let's move on to the last OG of the Blackbeard Pirates, and that is Doc Q. And once again, with him being a doctor, this is another obvious matchup. He's definitely gonna fight Chopper. What's interesting about this though is how the fight is gonna go down, because Doc Q is not a strong dude. He actually has a terrible disease. At the same time though, he's obviously gonna be strong in some regard, either like ability to make himself strong or just ability to make terrible diseases. And honestly, I think the latter might be the route that Oda takes, because although it's possible, I just don't see Doc Q like injecting himself with Hody steroids and going toe-to-toe with Monster Point Chopper. Instead, I feel like it might be a more strategic battle of him releasing diseases and Chopper trying to cure them, because honestly, post time skip, that's been what mostly Chopper has been doing. And that does make complete sense with his character, because at the end of the day, he's trying to cure every disease. On the other hand, I do want to see Chopper get a proper battle where he maybe has to awaken his Devil Fruit. That would be cool. But as far as this Doc Q fight goes, I do think it's probably more likely that it's going to be this medical battle of the Doctor versus the Plague. There's also some potential for this to get interesting story-wise. Maybe Doc Q gets redeemed after Chopper like heals his disease. But yeah, as far as this fight goes, it might not turn out to be the most interesting, but I do think it's going to really develop Chopper's dream and his character. With that said though, let's talk about the newer Blackbeard Pirates from Impel Down, and the first guy I want to talk about is Avalo Pizarro. Now you might be wondering why I'm talking about him first. It feels kind of random. He doesn't really stand out that much. But the reason I wanted to mention him first is because Sanji still does not have a fight, and Avalo Pizarro might be the best option. Because first off, none of the other Blackbeard Pirates really stand out as a Sanji opponent. But with Avalo Pizarro, there is some potential, because previously he was a tyrannical ruler in the North Blue, which is the place that Sanji is from, along with the Germa. Once again, this is a minor detail that Oda maybe just threw in there, but it does establish a connection between them. At the very least, I do think it gets addressed to some capacity, even if it's like a quick clash and they quickly talk about it. But because I don't really see any better matchups for Sanji, this one might make the most sense just because of that. So the next question we have to answer is, how difficult is this fight gonna be? Because current Sanji, as he is now, is also an absolute monster. So if Avalo Pizarro is gonna be a difficult opponent for future Sanji, he's probably gonna have to be stronger than Queen, which once again, you might think that's a little excessive given we haven't seen anything from Avalo Pizarro. But once again, there is some potential here, because there has been a theory that maybe Avalo Pizarro was a former commander of the Beast Pirates, because there has been some foreshadowing that there was a fourth commander to the Beast Pirates, and Avalo Pizarro does have that same horns that the rest of the Beast Pirates have. So if that theory actually turns out to be true, at the very least, he's close enough to the same level as Queen. And if you wanted to make him stronger than Queen, it's entirely possible that maybe he was the ace of the crew. And now all of a sudden you have another high level fight for Sanji. As always with Sanji fights, I expect him to show off his intelligence a little bit as well. The biggest question I probably have here is, what exactly is Sanji's next power up? Because honestly, in this battle against Queen, he's really got everything. He's got the Germa genes, the exoskeleton, the invisibility, Ifrit Jambe. I think he's pretty golden as far as everything goes. I do expect his observation haki to reach a godly level, but I think that happens in an Admiral fight against Kizaru that I talked about in this video. So honestly, with this fight, I'm not really sure what to expect. It could be a fight where Sanji has high difficulty, but is just like kind of adjusting to his powers, or it could end up being Sanji's most difficult fight because he's fighting the ace of the Beast Pirates. Either way though, I think Avalo might be the best Sanji opponent out of the Blackbeard Pirates, which means that low-key he might be one of the strongest within that crew. That being said though, let's move on to the next Blackbeard Pirate, and that is Catarina Devon. And with Catarina Devon, your first thought might be Robin because she's the only female left and you can have a girl fight. And I think it's entirely possible that does go down, but I also think there might be a better opponent for Robin that I'll talk about next. So for Catarina Devon, we're gonna have to try to figure out another matchup that makes sense. So let's look at her story and powers. Story-wise, she's got a pretty demented backstory because she's known as the Crescent Moon Hunter because she decapitated women and collected their heads. So yeah, honestly, she might be the most horrifying Blackbeard pirate. Power-wise, as we last saw, she has the mythical Zoan with the Kitsune fruit, which allows her to shapeshift, which honestly really fits her character because now she could change into those decapitated heads. Feels like to me she went out of her way to get that fruit for herself. But obviously there's going to be more to her power as she has a mythical Zoan. According to mythology, the Kitsune could manipulate fire, and once it activates all 9 tails, it turns white and gets godlike powers. That to me sounds like an awakened form. I'm not sure if Oda's going to go that far with Catarina Devon, but at the very least I think you can expect her to have shape-shifting, fire-bending abilities along with pretty strong powers. And honestly, matchup-wise, out of all the Straw Hats, I feel like Brook might be the best option. This fight to me has a lot of potential to be a great horror fight, where on one hand you have this demented woman that is literally collecting heads, on the other hand you have a skeleton. Catarina Devon also collected heads for their beauty, and I can see her like hating Brook because he's just a skeleton with no face. And although these are like all very weak connections, I do see some potential for this being a very fun fight. I think Catarina Devon is going to be very strong with the mythical Zoan, and it's going to be a very good test for Brook. And honestly, I'm kind of dying for a proper Brook 1v1 where he really gets to show off. Like, he has gotten some incredible moments recently, especially in Whole Cake Island, but he still has yet to have a proper 1v1. Even Jinbei got one, as bad as that fight was. So I think this could be a really fun matchup for Brook, where Oda has a lot of fun with the horror elements. I don't know if I'm thinking about horror so much because I just watched Doctor Strange, but because that movie was so much fun, I kind of want to see it in this fight as well. Moving on though, let's move on to the person that I think is a better matchup for Robin, and that is Juan Wolf. And honestly, I feel pretty good about this one. I always thought a giant Robin versus a giant Juan Wolf would be fun. But of course, recently, as we saw, she does have a giant form, not only in regular, but also a demon form. Now that I'm thinking about it, Demonio Floor could kind of work with Catarina Devon as well. So I guess these next three are kind of all interchangeable. But with Juan Wolf, there's a lot of fun potential as well. He's a giant with a giant fruit, making him the biggest human in the world. And the only two people that can turn giant within the Straw Hats are Robin and Luffy, and Luffy's not gonna fight Juan Wolf 1v1. So I think this is a good chance for Robin to really showcase her powers, maybe explain them a little more. She has a bit of history with giants as well with Jaguar D. Saul. That might come into play a little bit. And honestly, with all these fights, I'm just trying to figure out a way it could be really unique. Like with all these matchups so far, we got swordsmen and like a doctor fight, a horror fight. And this fight I'm just imagining to be a really fun Goliath versus Goliath fight. Like literally a Godzilla versus Khan scale of a battle. With that said though, that leads us to our last Blackbeard pirate that we know of, and that is Vasco Shot. And I guess that means he's gonna end up fighting Frankie according to my predictions. I will say Vasco Shot is probably the person I'm least interested in. There's nothing really special about him. We literally know nothing about his character either. So I guess Frankie could fight him and it could be a fun, hard-boiled fight. But yeah, besides Vasco Shot, we do still have the 10th Titanic Captain, who I think is Mad Monku Rogue, but you could check that out in this video. And also in my hand, I have one of the Straw Hats. If you guess it wrong, you have to like and subscribe and watch the next video. And the answer is Little Baby Chopper.